Well, here to help us navigate another historic milestone for the First Peoples of Turtle Island, welcome Dr. Niigaan Sinclair. Thank you for being here.
Great. Yeah, Miigwech for having me.
Now, as you know, the last time we talked was actually right after the Kamloops report of unmarked graves. Here we are again, not even a year later, and we're April 1st, 2022, the Pope's apology. Why was this so significant?
Well, I mean, it's a call to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, number 58. There's a reason why the Catholic Church has been given a specific call to action, a few of them, in fact. It has a lot to do with the fact that they ran the most amount of residential schools, but it also has a lot to do with the fact that the most violence that we've seen is from Catholic hands. And so there is a particular need for, I think, Indigenous Catholics, to many of whom are still tied to the church, to hear the Pope taking responsibility for the harms that have been perpetrated in the past. But most importantly, it's to move forward. It's for Canadian Catholics, it's for Canadians overall to look at an institution that has benefited greatly from residential schools. Most Catholic churches are still sitting on lands that were given to them by the country, taken from Indigenous peoples, including residential school sites as well, raising hundreds of millions of dollars. And so the fact is the Catholic Church is a much harder road because it has denied its responsibility for such a long period of time. Not all, of course, the Catholic Council of Bishops has taken some responsibility, but that the highest echelons of the Catholic Church in the Vatican had refused to do so until very recently.
The second thing that they had asked was, why does the apology need to now happen on Canadian soil?
Well, the fact is that the Pope needs to face survivors, period. This is not a matter of being able to do what he did, or the previous Pope, sorry, in Pope Benedict back in 2009, met very briefly with Phil Fontaine, a very small amount of delegation from the Assembly of First Nations, in a private meeting, released a very small statement. This is not suitable, especially considering what we now know, which is the atrocities perpetrated by the Catholic Church, the unmarked graves, the fact that schools run by the Catholic Church, funded by the Canadian government, were virtual death traps for many children, where starvation took place, where tuberculosis epidemics took place, where outright murder in some cases took place. And I'm saying that with deep respect, someone who has deep affection for the Catholic Church. Most of my family are Catholics. I say that deeply caring about the fact that these churches are still in our communities. Many Indigenous peoples want them to stay, like myself, who think they do some very good work, but they need to deal with the issue of the abuse that continues to be rampant throughout the church.
And this is what I found the most inspiring by the delegates, First Nation, Métis, and Inuit delegates, is that they didn't back down from telling the truth. Can you elaborate on the disposition of Indigenous people?
What's probably most remarkable about last week was not the Pope. It was the work of survivors. The fact that these survivors who experienced such atrocities in schools run by the church went all the way to the headquarters, the very leader of the person who leads the institution that abused them, and were able to speak confidently with incredible, inspiring, loving words, and called for peace, called for community, called for treaty. That's what those survivors were doing. That's remarkable. And that is an unprecedented moment in world history in which a group that experienced genocide gets an opportunity to engage, to invite, to spend time with the individual who leads the institution that perpetrated that genocide.
Can you share with our audience the significance of the symbolism, the gifts that were exchanged? Why are gifts important in Indigenous culture?
So I wrote about this in a column. So I invite everyone to read my column with the Winnipeg Free Press. But at the same time, gifts don't come without meaning. There is no gifts without strings in the Indigenous world. Every gift is invited to think, to consider, to act differently. So gifts are meant for purpose. But to send a message of peace and understanding that the Pope should be thinking. One of the things the Assembly of First Nations did was offer to the Pope a cradle board, one of our what's called a Niigaan, which is the way we carry our babies. And that Pope was given that Niigaan for 24 hours to care for, to show his appreciation and to show the fact that he's learned on behalf of the church how to treat children appropriately. And so he returned that to Niigaan, and the Assembly of First Nations delegation were impressed by his words, mostly for the mere sake that they appreciated the sentiment of what the Pope is intending to do, which is now to come to Canada.
What does it look like from this point forward?
Well, right now, I mean, the most important thing is to start to prepare for the Papal visit, which we are hearing in either July or September, and will likely be in Alberta. What that means is that all the different work that goes into a Papal visit, but most importantly, like what communities is he going to, who will he be speaking with, and then at the same time, what does it mean to go forward with the Catholic Church in Canada? The Catholic Church needs to pay its outstanding bill to survivors without any strings attached, begin the gesture of returning that stolen land, talking about where that land is, return the documents or make documents available that tell the story of who are in those unmarked graves. Also return some of the stolen materials that we're hearing about in both the Vatican and in places like the Mary Oblates, which have opened up their documents and opened up their materials. And then, of course, the larger issue, which is if the Catholic Church is going to continue to be in our communities, it has to deal with the issue of abuse within it. It has to show beyond some kind of papal statement or some policy that nobody reads. It has to perform action to stop the abusers, stop protecting the abusers, stop abuse in the church, which just seems to be circulating and perpetuating throughout time. I care a lot about the Catholic Church. None of this is said without deep, deep caring. Many Indigenous peoples want a relationship with the church, whether to be in it or to be partners with it. And so let's not forget that the Catholic Church is an important entity, and this is all said out of trying to make it better.
Niigaan, these things are very clear. It's created a clear step forward, and I pray, and our team here is praying that this healing will come, so that the dream and the desire from our delegates represented, they said, we have to do this now so that our future generations are not just tolerated, but they're celebrated and honored. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yeah, miigwech, thanks so much.